To the meeting. You can hear me okay, yeah? Right. Nice warm day today. Looks like there's no apologies. Seems to be is it Councillor Taylor, yeah? Councillor Taylor. We've got everybody else except Councillor Taylor. So move on to right, Councillor Monroe, yeah. Thank you. Minutes of the previous meeting, I move as a correct record. Is there a seconder?
Can I make a point, please, Chair?
Yes,
I actually did send my apologies to the last meeting and it disappeared in the ether, so can my apologies be noted?
Okay, that's
please?
Fine.
Thank you.
Can that be noted, please? Yeah. Right, can I have a seconder for that, please? Thank you, Councillor Hall. So item 3, is there any interest or lobbies? I'll go through everybody individually. So can I have Councillor Monroe?
Thank you, Chair. I'm substituting for Councillor John Lawson today.
Thank you. Councillor Pennick?
Thank you, Chair. I have been lobbied on item 8 and item 9, but I've given the usual advice, but no opinion was expressed.
Thank you. Councillor Lunath? Right. Councillor Hall? On.
Mics on, please.
Yeah, can you put your mics on, please, so they can hear? Thank you.
No.
Thank you, Councillor Hall. Councillor Nashin Dad?
None.
Councillor Lowe?
None, Chair.
Councillor, can't see the board. Put the board up, please. This one. Councillor Glegg?
None.
Thank you. It's a bit difficult. Councillor Sheard?
None.
Councillor Stevens?
None.
Councillor Scott?
None, Chair.
Councillor Pervez?
Item 13.
Right. I think same. I've been lobbied by someone from item 13 and all. Is that the 40 Beckett Crescent?
Yes.
Yeah. Right. Can you guys do me a favour? There's a form in the pack, so if you just fill that in and hand it in after the meeting. Thank you. Admission of the public. There is no private. Sorry, I've told you guys to turn the mic on, mine's still off. Sorry about that. So do I do it again or? After 7, yeah. So we're on to the application 2020-90411 and we've got officer to read out the application. Can you do that now, please? Thank you. Bit of technical issue. Hello?
Kate. Do you want to test now, Kate, please?
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
right.
thank you.
I'll start again. Okay. My name is Kate Mansell, Development Management Master Planner in the Majors and Minerals team. This is item 7 on the agenda, application 2020-90411, relating to land at 7 and 11 Church Lane in Gomersall. It is an outline application to consider the principle of residential development on the site, as well as the means of access and the layout of the development. The appearance of the houses, their scale and landscaping are all reserved for future consideration. This is the extent of the application site. Church Lane bounds it to the south, with properties on Bronte Close to the west. To the north are fields used by Gomersall Primary School. Cleckheaton lies just over a mile to the west. This is an aerial view of the site, which is outlined in red on this slide. It is a combination of existing houses, outbuildings, gardens and fields. This slide also shows the proximity to some services and facilities, including Gomersall Primary School and local shops. These photographs show the character of the immediate vicinity of the site along Church Lane. The top left photograph is part of the site frontage with a low stone wall and planting behind it, which forms part of the area's character. The two other images show the housing across the street from the site, which is quite mixed in appearance. These are images taken within the site showing the fields to the rear of 7 and 11 Church Lane. This slide is taken from the site allocation from the local plan. It confirms that the majority of the site is allocated for housing with an indicative capacity of 22 dwellings. The principle of residential development is therefore consistent with the local plan. The allocation does not include 11 Church Lane here, which has also been incorporated within the red line boundary of this planning application. However, the appropriateness of redeveloping an existing dwelling and its garden for residential use is fully detailed in the report. In essence, it is concluded that the proposal would adjoin existing residential development to the south, east and west, and it would be accessible to local services and facilities, such that it is considered acceptable in principle. Means of access into the site. For 19 of the houses, the means of access would be taken from Church Lane. It would be a priority junction with the road constructed to a minimum 6 metre width and a 2 metre footway on each side running into the site. Units 20 and 21 here would be accessed directly from Church Lane via a single point of access onto the road. Highways Development Management have confirmed that these access points are acceptable and they can achieve appropriate visibility displays. The traffic impact of this development has also been assessed. It was based upon 23 dwellings. That figure was derived from the originally submitted scheme of 25 houses minus the 2 that already exist on the site. Using a standard national database of trip rates, the transport statement concluded that the development would have the potential to generate between 11 and 12 trips on the network in peak periods. Using the council's preferred trip rate, which is higher than that typically used in transport assessments, the traffic generation could increase to 16 to 17 trips during the network peak. However, that figure is likely to be less as the scheme was revised in the course of the application from 25 units to 21, meaning only 19 new dwellings. Overall, the proposal would generate a very modest level of traffic onto the highway network, which could be readily accommodated. The site would also be within walking distance of local shops and facilities and to bus stops with good connections to surrounding towns and cities. The proposed means of access is therefore considered acceptable. Turning to the layout of the development, as noted previously, this was revised in the course of the planning application from 25 houses to 21. This would result in a density of 29 dwellings per hectare. Whilst this would be below a density of at least 35 dwellings per hectare promoted by the local plan, the policy does state that lower densities can be acceptable if it is demonstrated that this is necessary to ensure that the development is compatible with its surroundings. In this case, the lower density enables the development to respect the building line along Church Lane and the character of existing houses, which are typically set back from the road with a garden to the front. It would also achieve an appropriate relationship to existing houses as detailed in the report. 20% of the development would be affordable units. There is an area of on-site open space here, and its location would ensure the protection of trees that adjoin the site. The provision would be substandard, such that a contribution towards off-site open space within the locality of the site would still be required, and this would be secured by means of a legal agreement. This is detailed in the report. The open space would also accommodate the drainage infrastructure for the development. In this case, it would be a pumping station, principally because there is no recognised outfall from the site. The lead local flood authority accept this solution in this instance due to specific site circumstances, subject to a strict management and maintenance strategy up to potential adoption by Yorkshire Water. This would be secured through the legal agreement. A technical appraisal of the application with regard to other matters including biodiversity, environmental health and ground conditions are all fully detailed in the report before you, and these are considered to have been sufficiently addressed subject to conditions and relevant clauses within the legal agreement. For these reasons, and having regard to the full assessment of the proposal set out in the report, including the Section 106 contributions to be secured, which relate to affordable housing, off-site open space, an education contribution of just over £42,000, a sustainable travel fund contribution of just over £12,000, securing biodiversity net gain, as well as management and maintenance arrangements for open space and drainage. It is recommended that approval of the application be delegated to the Head of Planning in order to complete the list of conditions, including those set out in the report, and the sealing of the Section 106 agreement. That is the end of the presentation. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for that. We have got a speaker by phone. Hi, welcome to the meeting. You've got 3 minutes and you can start now. Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chair and members. For those of you who don't know me, my name is David Story. I'm a Chartered Town Planner speaking on behalf of the applicant. You've had a full and comprehensive report presented to you and a verbal report as well. So I'm just going to pick out some salient points that support the application. The starting point really is Section 38(6) of the Planning and Compulsory Purchase Act 2004. That requires planning applications to be determined in accordance with the development plan unless material considerations indicate otherwise. Now, some long-standing members on the committee will be aware of the length of time it took to replace the unit development plan. That ran to 2006 with a Kirklees local plan that was finally adopted in 2019. The local plan identifies sites for development, including housing. That's sites where the council want to direct those form of developments to. The plan-led system in this country provides certainty for developers in bringing forward development proposals on allocated sites. The majority of the sites is allocated in the local plan for housing, and that local plan went through a detailed examination and consultations throughout the local plan process before being adopted. An underpinning theme of the NPPF is promoting sustainable development, and this is echoed in the local plan. Policy LP1 reflects the NPPF presumption in favour of sustainable development, and proposals that accord with policies in the local plan should be approved without delay. That's what it says in the policy. The principal development is clearly acceptable with the allocation, and this scheme is in outline, with the only matters for you to consider today being the access and layout. All consultees you'll see in your reports are supportive of the application and all relevant policy requirements are met, along with the Section 106 contributions required as well. Given all these, there are no planning reasons for you to withhold planning permission, and we commend the officer's recommendation to you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for that. Members?
Thank you.
Monroe.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to make a comment on this in relation to the detailed landscape scheme. A lot seems to be hinging on that scheme that is for reserved matters, and I feel that I think it would be better for us to. I wondered how feasible it would be for the developers to actually provide such a detailed scheme before we can grant outline planning permission today. If somebody could answer that, please. Thank you. Oh, sorry.
Kate?
Sorry, Julia. Chair, I was just going to come back on that. The applicant has not applied for landscaping at this time. They've applied for an outline application with layout and access, so landscaping remains the reserved matters. When that comes in, if it isn't acceptable, we have the potential to review that reserved matters. That's in our gift, but at this stage they haven't applied for that, so we can't then not make a decision on the application in front of us. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. Is that okay?
Yeah, yes, that explains that. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Pinnock?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, generally speaking, I'm supportive of this application, but there are one or two questions that I feel I need to ask, particularly in relation to the Section 106 items that are mentioned in the recommendation. I would like to know where the open space is that this contribution is going to go in support of. I'm not clear as to how the long-term maintenance of the public open space is going to be managed. And finally, in the transport contribution, there is mention of improvements to a bus stop. Now, there are two possible bus stops that this could be, one of which I think is in a very awkward location and probably needs to be moved because it causes obstruction to anybody who knows the Hilltop Junction, the one outside the former co-op. Regularly buses cause tailbacks, people coming around the corner and up Church Lane. So I'm not convinced that's in entirely the right place. I don't know which bus stop 14094 is. It could be the one on the other side. I'd like clarification on those points, please, Chair.
Thank you. Kate?
Let me just come back on the open space. It would be spent within 720 metres of the site, and I'm advised that there's a facility at Spen Lane where this money could be used to improve some planting there, and there's a dipping pond. So that's where we're intending to use the money. That was the first question. I'm just trying to find where the bus stop is. Can I come back to you on that point?
Yeah, that's fine. Is that all, Councillor Pinnock?
Yeah, that's okay.
Thank you. Councillor Law?
Thank you, Chair. First of all, can I just thank officers for this report? It really is a very comprehensive and thorough report. Thank you. I do know this area quite well, but I did take a liberty of actually going and have a look myself. It is a really, really nice area. It has got excellent local facilities. I did also note the bus stop that Councillor Pinnock is referring to. I think the bus stop is actually quite near to the entrance to the site. So obviously we would have to look at possibly relocating that bus stop. Personally, I'd like to have seen bungalows here. I always say this, I do think we've got a shortage of bungalows, and somehow I can't persuade developers to think about building bungalows But I am pleased to see that the number of dwellings has been reduced from 25 to 21, and hopefully this will offer more garden space. I get quite concerned when developers design these properties and there's very little garden space. I think my only concern is the actual traffic impact. This is a very, very busy road, even what we call off-peak. When we went to visit a couple of days ago, it was only 11 o'clock in the morning and there was still quite a build-up of traffic. So I think just the traffic impact is my only concern. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Scott.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I think it's a nice report, but there's some issues that I just want clarifying on. And if you look on page 20, and under other considerations, it says, in that paragraph, it says subsidence from underground work to be implemented, damage to the foundations. Residents state they already have cracks in the foundations of their bungalow. Can you answer that for me, please? Was it a former mining area underneath it? If it was, is there an issue? Is there an opening of a mine or something that needs capping off?
Katie.
Chair, thank you. There's a very small corner of this site that falls within a high-risk coal mining area, but it's not where the houses are sited. And actually, the Coal Authority have come back and said they don't have any objections to this development, and there was no need for a coal mining risk assessment. In terms of properties that are moved as existing properties, obviously that's an existing problem, but it's not related, as far as I understand, to development on this site, and there's no coal mining risk emanating from this site. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Scott.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I must have omitted it. I couldn't see the coal mining report in this. Sorry.
Chair, sorry, it's referred to in the ground conditions section.
Thank you, Councillor Scott. Councillor Sheard.
Thank you. I'm just going to echo what Councillor Lowe said surrounding the traffic problems. Now, I have passed through the area quite a few times during peak hours and during school hours, and traffic is an issue. Now, if you have a look under section 7.3 in public local responses, it says that there's no evidence that's been taken into account of any increased traffic, and that parked cars are already causing near-miss accidents. Do you think it could be beneficial to provide some sort of traffic survey to residents to reassure them that there's not going to be an increased problem?
Katie.
Chair, I'm going to pass.
Right, just 1 minute. Yeah, go on.
Through you, Chair. Ryan Kinder, Highway Development Management. The development has been assessed by the Council's Urban Transport Control Section, which looks after the signalised junction near to the development. They've suggested that there's no residual impact as a result of this development. It is acknowledged that the junction is busy currently. However, the cumulative impact of this development won't have any impact as such, and have advised no further action is necessary. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Right, any other? Councillor Lunath?
Thank you. A couple of questions. I know we've reduced the amount of houses that the developers are wanting at the site. I'm still thinking that perhaps 2021 is still a few more. The report indicates dumps, obviously, dustbin vehicles wanting to go in and perhaps wanting to turn might have issues if parked vehicles were obviously parked at the houses. Is that something you could be able to address before?
Through you, Chair. The existing site access on Church Lane itself, there are a number of keep clear markings along there. Now, we can condition that a keep clear marking is provided across the site access to ensure that access in the night is available, if you wish.
Yes, please. I'm also thinking about within the site itself, at the back row of houses, when they're at one corner, are they backing themselves back up? I mean, as councillors, we have issues in the ward where we have narrow streets or narrow alleyways. I'm thinking the back row of houses will have issues if there's vehicles parked outside those houses as well.
That's something that can be further assessed at reserve matters. As it's for outline only, more detailed information will be submitted, and we'll look into that issue at that stage, if that's okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Just sorry, one final point, possibly again for reserve matters. Would we consider having electric charging points at the 3 and 4 bedroom properties as well?
Thank you, Chair. Julia Stedman, Group Leader in Development Management. So just to come back, I suppose, a couple of points there. There is visitor parking provided within the proposed layout as well, so hopefully that should mitigate sort of that on-street parking and sort of any impact on like bin wagons and things like that within the site. And just in terms of the electric vehicle charging points, yes, we have recommended a condition. We have recommended a condition to be included should permission be granted. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Scott.
Yeah, Chair, I'd just like to apologise to Kate because it is conditioned, and one of the conditions 17 about boreholes being submitted before any commencement of this development, which is really, really important because particularly with the weather we're having, the floods and the land giving way, I think it's really important. So apologies, Kate.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Pinnock.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to come back on the bus stop issue, but I'd also like to propose that if we are going to give permission, that condition 4 should be altered to include consultation with local residents in line with the condition that I have proposed in other cases. I think particularly given the fact that has already been mentioned, people getting access onto this road, especially when there's queuing traffic, could be an issue. And I think the involvement, I think it's important that local people who already live there should be involved in this. They might not like the development, but it's better if they are involved anyway. It can help to resolve conflicts that can occur in such circumstances. Thank you. And the bus stop.
Thank you. Can I just ask the highways, the access on Church Lane, is there anything like a yellow box where traffic is coming out and traffic is flowing on Church Lane, so they stop and there's a box there so to have them pull out from the estate?
Through you, Chair. Yellow box markings aren't generally provided to get onto the highway. They're to keep junctions clear, so to provide a yellow box marking there would encourage people to come out of the site access into the yellow box marking, which is illegal. So that sort of arrangement is not permitted. However, a keep clear marking is advisory, and that's what they are for, both for access and egress. As I mentioned previously, we'll look into the conditioning an additional keep clear marking for the site access as part of this to match in with the other ones along Church Lane.
So you're saying that we have not got any yellow boxes in Kirklees?
Yes, we do, but yellow box markings aren't provided to allow access out of side roads, because you're encouraging traffic then to come out of the side road into the yellow box marking, and that's not permitted.
Okay, thank you. Any other speakers?
Thanks, Chair.
Can I come back to Councillor Pinnock?
Oh, yes, I'll
Sorry,
speak.
yeah, Kate, yeah.
Sorry, Councillor, just to answer your question, yes, we can amend the construction management plan to include consultation as we have done on other sites. And the bus stop you're referring to is actually the one opposite Sainsbury's on Oxford Road. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. Are you okay with that, Councillor Pinnock? Right, Councillor Stephen, sorry about that.
Thanks, Chair. I like that it's been included in the plan that consideration has been taken to keep
the houses set back from the road so that it's in keeping, because this is a road that it's full of character. I do think, as Councillor Luna said, 21 does seem too many houses for me in this location. It's very close to this busy junction, which is always busy and on quite a steep hill. And I think funneling the traffic through this new housing development onto that road would make it very difficult for, if there was one or more cars to turn onto the road. You're reliant on people already queuing in traffic letting the cars out if they were turning right up the hill, and the cars queue down past the roads, Craven Lane and Muffet Lane at the moment. Traffic to me is a big issue with this one. I do agree with Councillor Pinnock that the residents, I think, should absolutely be kept involved with this, because I think 21 is a lot of houses to put in this location. It feels too many for me. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Councillor Scott.
Yes, Chair, I'd like to move officers' recommendations with the additional things to be put in consultation.
Okay, thank you.
I'll second that, Chair.
Okay. Is there any other movers? So we've got mover and a seconder. Can we go to the vote, please?
Thanks, Chair. Councillor Dodd? Voting on the officer's recommendation, abstain. Councillor Gregg?
For.
Councillor Hall? Councillor Hussain?
Against.
Councillor Lowe?
Abstain.
Councillor Lunart? Councillor Munro? Councillor Bavais?
Against.
Councillor Pinnock?
For.
Councillor Scott?
For.
Councillor Sheard?
For.
Councillor Stephen? Against. That's 5 for, 4 against and 3 abstentions. That's carried.
Yeah, that's been approved. Thank you. Item 8, planning application 2020-91747. Adam Walker.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair. Adam Walker, Senior Planning Officer. Item 8 on the agenda is for the demolition of buildings and erection of 9 light industrial units at land adjacent to 60 Northgate, Cleckheaton. Apologies, I just seem to be having some trouble with the presentation. Could you just confirm whether you could see that aerial photograph?
Yeah, we can see that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Apologies for that. The application was deferred by this committee at the meeting on the 14th of April this year. The reason the application was deferred was so that members could undertake their own site visits. The proposal is for 9 light industrial units on an area of vacant land that lies on the edge of Cleckheaton Town Centre. The site is identified in red on this aerial photo and location plan. The blue line on the right shows the extent of the town centre boundary. The site lies within a mixed-use area. There's a home bargain store to the south of the site, commercial development and a dental practice to the east, residential development to the north and west, along with some light industrial and office uses. The site wraps around 60 Northgate, Cleckheaton, which is currently vacant but has an established use for office space. The site is bound to the north by Scott Lane and to the west by Northgate. The land slopes down from Northgate towards the eastern boundary. These photos show what the northern part of the site looked like before it was cleared earlier this year. It contained a number of derelict buildings relating to some previous uses, including a snooker hall and children's nursery. The southern part of the site formed an area of scrubby ground before it was largely cleared of vegetation. And these photos show what the site looks like today. This slide shows the proposed site layout plan. There are 6 units in the northern part of the site and 3 units in the southern part. There will be separate in and out access with vehicles coming in from Scott Lane and exiting onto Northgate. These sections give an indication of the scale of the buildings in relation to existing property. If you look at the middle drawing, it shows the building in white in the middle, which I'm highlighting. That's the existing building. So there'll be a row of 3 properties to the left of that, and you can see it's ever so slightly below the ridge height of the existing building. These units will be faced in natural stone to the frontage. You see the 3 units in the southern part of the site, they're set back from the road, and because of the topography are at a lower level. And on this bottom section, it just indicates these are existing buildings on the opposite side of Northgate, and the buildings follow down, following the topography of the land, with sloped roofs to lessen the impact on in terms of their bulk and mass. These perspective views show the proposed development from a westerly direction. It's to be noted that these perspectives don't show a small ancillary office extension which has been added to this particular unit since the committee last considered this application. You can see the 2-storey building fronting onto Northgate with areas of glazing, and it would also have pedestrian doors, so it would be an active frontage. The rest of the units would have grey cladding. Officers have recommended that the boundary walling to Northgate and Scott Lane would be a stone wall to help tie the development in with the surrounding area. These are some alternative perspective views. The one on the left shows the rear of the development with the roof sloping down at the back. The view on the right is from the north and shows how the development will sit alongside the Home Bargains store. In terms of the assessment, the proposal is for light industrial starter units. There are already 3 local businesses lined up to occupy 4 of the units, and the applicant has advised that there is also interest in some of the other units. It is expected that a development of this scale and nature could support around 40 full-time jobs, and so there are strong economic benefits to the proposal. The development would also bring some brownfield land back into use. The key issues are whether the proposed development can be accommodated without resulting in any significant harm to residential amenity, highway safety, or visual amenity. Light industry falls within use class E and covers uses that can be carried out in a residential area without detriment to its amenity. The principle of light industrial use is therefore considered to be compatible alongside residential development. It is recognised that there are residential properties nearby that have the potential to be impacted by noise. To address this, it is recommended that a condition is imposed restricting the level of noise from each of the individual units. The condition would cover the combined noise from any vehicle movements, work activity, fixed mechanical services, and external plant and equipment from each individual unit. The condition will be set against a maximum decibel level below the background sound level. This is the most appropriate means to control noise, given that all of the end users of the units are not currently known. An additional condition restricting the hours of use to prevent nighttime working is also recommended to help protect local residents. Officers are satisfied that these conditions will ensure that noise from the whole site is controlled effectively. Other conditions to address residents' concerns are also recommended, including control over external lighting to prevent undue light spill, as well as a construction management plan. Turning to highway matters, the nature of the units, which are relatively small starter units for light industrial purposes, means that they are most likely to be served by small to medium commercial vehicles, such as a 7.5 metre panel van. It is, however, acknowledged that heavy goods vehicles would visit the site from time to time, and the applicant has demonstrated that such vehicles can be accommodated within the site. The proposed one-way vehicular access system is welcomed by Highways Development Management because it would overcome potential visibility concerns from the site onto Scott Lane. It is considered that vehicles wanting to go to Chain Bar would most likely turn right out of the site and go via Scott Lane, whereas vehicles wanting to head southwards would most likely turn left out of the site and travel via Horncastle Street. This would help to alleviate issues caused by vehicles trying to turn right out of Scott Lane onto the A638. In summary, officers are satisfied that the traffic associated with the development can be accommodated on the highway network. A total of 48 parking spaces are proposed, and this level of parking is considered acceptable for the development, particularly considering its accessible location on the edge of the town centre. In terms of other matters, officers consider that the scale and design of the development would assimilate successfully, having regard to the character of the area. The development would deliver a 10% biodiversity net gain through an off-site contribution, and measures for biodiversity enhancement and a condition for biodiversity enhancement measures has been recommended, and that they will be measures to be incorporated into the development itself. There are no objections from Kirklees Lead Local Flood Authority, subject to a condition regarding detailed drainage design. In summary, officers consider that the application is acceptable, subject to the conditions listed in the report, and it is therefore recommended for approval. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for that. Members? Councillor Law?
Thank you, Chair. I actually did attend the site visit yesterday with officers, and I was really glad that I did, because looking at this planning application as it stands for this development, I'm not opposed to this land being developed, because apparently it's been like this for about nearly 20 years, I've been told, so it is an eyesore. It does need something doing with it. Obviously, I'm a bit of a bore. I'd like residential development there, bungalows, another hint. So I'm not opposed to the land actually being developed, but by visiting the area yesterday, I became very aware of the problems that heavy goods vehicles would cause, the impact that would be in this area, because I didn't know Scott Lane, but we had trouble because Scott Lane was actually closed yesterday. So we couldn't actually, when I say we, my husband drives me, sorry. When I tried to get to the site yesterday, we had real difficulty actually getting there because Scott Lane was actually closed. So when we then actually were on site, like I said, the land does need something doing with it. It is an eyesore, does need developing. But I was aware of the really bad state of Northgate Road. Will the developer be contributing to the resurfacing of that road? It's in an absolutely disgraceful state. But my concern is vehicles actually coming out of the site once it's developed, because if we could ensure that there was a condition saying you must turn left on Northgate, then left down Horncastle Street, and then left or right into Bradford Road, that would be a safer route of travelling. But vehicles might just decide to come out of the site. I'm concerned about the turning point. The road's not very wide. For vehicles coming out of the site, turning right, then turning right down Scott Lane, and then trying to pull out of there, because the Bradford Road's a really busy road, and the roads in this vicinity are really narrow. So I'm afraid, again, I'm just concerned about the heavy goods vehicles, the impact on the traffic. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Do you want to come in?
Through you, Chair. The traffic associated with this development is mainly going to be light goods and medium goods vehicles. As Adam mentioned, there will be an element of HGV movements associated with it. However, the surrounding businesses, mainly the Home Bargains, which is adjacent to this site, and the Tesco store, the level of HGV movements is not disproportionate to the existing situation, and therefore considered acceptable in that respect. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Pinnock.
Thank you, Chair. Can I first of all ask about industrial use classes? What we fondly know as B something. I understand this has all been changed, and I would just like some clarification for all our benefits as to what light industrial actually means. Does it include both B1 and B2? In other words, general industry and industry that can live next door to housing. Can I just have that clarification, please?
Through you, Chair. This is Adam Walker. In response to Councillor Pinnock's points about the use class, it falls within use class E, which is the old B1 use class. It doesn't. These units wouldn't be classed as general industrial, so the sort of the heavier industrial uses. These are light industrial units, which are have to be compatible within a residential area. So they are restricted in terms of the scope of the industrial operations that they can carry out here. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. Nevertheless, I do think that it is possible, given what Mr. Walker said in his presentation about measures required to alleviate noise from some of these units when they're in operation. Clearly, that indicates that there is a level of noise that something needs to be done about. And to my mind, I would prefer housing on this site. What I'm going to try and do now is construct a reasons for refusing this, and which could therefore pave the way for a housing application. Who knows? We'll see. I do think the noise issue is one that could have the potential, despite conditions, to cause a nuisance. And we all know that even if conditions are imposed, the onus on implementing those conditions lies upon those people who live near the site, and this would not be any exception. So I'm really rather concerned about that. The other issue relates to the road network around there, and the reason why I wanted a site visit so that members can see exactly what it's like. And I was also there yesterday lunchtime with Councillor Lowe, and was able to point out some of the issues where movements are, shall we say, difficult. To the north of the site, you have Scott Lane, and then which leads on to Whitcliffe Road. If you look on the map that is on the front page of the agenda item, this looks dead straight all the way up, but the way you have to drive up there is certainly not dead straight because things to do with the road service, but also large numbers of parked cars, especially around the junction, where there is a block of flats and some houses in multiple occupation down the road to one side, and terraced houses going up Whitcliffe Road. So there are always parked cars there, which makes it quite difficult, not just for HGVs, but also for larger commercial vehicles. So I'm of the opinion that a development which, although it may not attract large numbers of HGVs, will nevertheless attract a relatively large number of commercial vehicles of different kinds. And I personally think this is unsuitable in that location. Although there's a sawmill on the opposite side of the road from this site and a repair workshop on George Street, mostly you are between a residential area and what might be described as town centre uses, starting with Home Bargains at the other end of Northgate. So I'm working round to reasons for refusal on this application, even though I accept that there are people looking for premises and I understand their issues. It's just that I don't think this is the best location for it. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Scott.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Pinnock stole my thunder, and just for the record, myself and Councillor Pervez actually went out on Sunday and did all the site visits, and we came across Scott Lane, which was closed. Trying to find a way to manoeuvre to get ourselves to there, it was quite challenging. I think it's really important that we take into account how small and narrow those roads are and congested with parking. And also these units, I don't think they're ideally situated where they want to be. It's too close. It's going to impinge on the residential area, definitely. And what worries me sometimes about light industrial, it's the flow of their vehicles that are coming in and out and going through the night, because you don't know how often they're going to work. Is it a normal 9 to 5? Is it a 24-hour operation? Things like that really worry me. Thanks for saying about the youth class, because I think that helped, but also it doesn't help if you don't know what it's for. So I'm actually moving to refuse this application. So that's where I'm at with it, because I don't think it's in the right place. It'd be nice for us industrial units, but I don't think it's in the right location.
Thank you. Councillor Sheard.
Thank you, Chair. The units are going to be rather close to family houses that are going to have small and younger children. Now, I'm wondering what plans are in place to limit the amount of noise and light pollution from these units if they were to be approved.
Councillor Luneth.
Thank you. I was probably going to echo Councillor Pinnock, Councillor Sheard and Scott have already said. The noise is definitely a big concern. I'm not quite there yet in terms of a refusal, so I'll wait for officers to give me some more guidance about what they're planning to do, what kind of conditions we can put on in terms of the noise conditions that we can have. One other question I have is, in the report, Adam, you mentioned you're looking at having they're looking at having about approximately 40 full-time jobs with about 48 parking spaces. Is that 48 large HGV parking spaces, and does that include spaces for them to already load up their vehicles and things like that, and then have staff vehicles as well? Because that kind of doesn't really look quite appealing in any way whatsoever, because just possibly having 5 parking spaces per unit is definitely not looking attractive enough to approve this at the moment. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other speakers? Councilman Rosary.
Thank you. I just wanted to. It's about the proposal for a one-way system. I just want to know how the council are going to ensure that the one-way system that's proposed, how will that be adhered? How will they ensure that will be adhered to?
Through you, Chair. As it's on private land, it will be managed by signing and self-enforcement. It's outside the jurisdiction of highways, is that? So it's a case of general comings and goings. That conflict will be removed itself. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you. That really, I mean, that's really helpful, because there's no way the council can enforce this. So I'll leave that there. Thank you.
Councillor Pinnock, do you want to?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I think that makes one of the points that certainly will be an issue. It may be that we could say traffic must come in off Scott Lane and go out on Northgate, but you then can't say if it comes out on Northgate they must turn left. You can't enforce that. Some people will turn right and then have to negotiate the junction at the bottom of Wycliffe Road, which, as I've already indicated, is a bit tricky. With this sort of development, as I think it's Councillor Lunat said, there will be people loading up at different times of day. Sometimes at the same time of day, whereas with a housing development, it's relatively near the town centre, so you probably wouldn't have a lot of cars around in any case. Access to good bus services and so on. And I know that would apply to people working in the units there, but to be perfectly honest, I just don't see how this can work, and I'm just trying to work out reasons for refusal that are reasonably solid, and I'm struggling a bit at the moment. But I think the environment created by a lot of industrial units, even with conditions relating to noise alleviation, would not be conducive in a residential area. It sounds a bit nebulous at the moment, but I might need some help in wording that properly. So I will second Councillor Scott's proposition to refuse this. We'll work out the grounds in a minute.
Can I just bring in Julia, please?
So thank you, Chair. First of all, before we sort of discuss more in terms of the reasons for refusal, could I just bring in the case officer who can hopefully clarify some of the points and some of the questions which have been raised as part of the debate? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Adam?
Thank you, Julia and Chair. In terms of the residential amenity queries that have been raised and concerns, the Council's Environmental Services Department have been consulted on the application and they've not raised any objections. We're recommending 3 important conditions to protect local residents in terms of this scheme. One is the one I described in the presentation around noise and limiting the maximum noise level from the individual units, and the Council Planning Compliance team would be able to ensure that that is adhered to during the lifetime of the development. The second condition is around the controlling the hours of working. So we could, the Council can control, prevent nighttime working and early start working into the evenings as necessary. And then in terms of external lighting and potential glare to properties, there'd be a condition for requiring details of a scheme, the lighting scheme, to be submitted and approved by the local planning authority, and the Council of Environmental Services would be consulted on that, so they would have some input there. There was also a query around the parking spaces and loading space. The 48 parking spaces proposed are all separate to the loading area. There's loading space in front of each of the units, and then separate parking for the workers and any visitors to the premises. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Adam. Can I just ask Adam, how long has this site been like this, and is there any other applications that have been we received on this site?
It's at least 20 years, probably more in terms of it being vacant land. So obviously those the photos how it looked up until quite recently with the derelict structures. So it was an untidy site and something of an eyesore. There haven't been any other schemes that have come forward in the intervening period. There was a pre-application inquiry for a mixed residential and commercial scheme, but the application that was ultimately submitted is the one that is before members today. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Law?
Thank you again, Chair. Can I just thirdly support refusal on this? Just picking on something that Councillor Scott mentioned about the obviously opening hours of this site. We have an industrial unit in my ward, and vehicles will actually park up in the very early hours of the morning waiting for the site to open, and this causes major problems on the surrounding roads to this business. I would feel for the people who do live across the road from the site. I believe they're quite newish housing association properties, and I can imagine that they'd be a little bit displeased with what's going to be developed there. Like you said again, the site has been like that for about 20 years, but I just think it's important that we get it right. Okay, thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Can I just say to members, obviously, there is a shortage of, like new units, especially commercial, and creating a lot of jobs. And the place has been vacant for over 20 years. And if there was any interest of any other residential, it should have come in front of us. But at the moment, there is nothing there. But this is going to create a lot of jobs. So just bear in mind. Thank you. Councillor Scott.
Chair, I just want to pick up on something Councillor Lowe has actually said. Some of these industrial units, they queue and they have a time slot when they can get in, and they don't often go and queue and wait inside the car parks, which are closed, to stop travellers actually going in. They have them closed off, their engines are ticking over in the early hours, waiting to get in, say, 5 o'clock in the morning to that site. So I do think, if you look at the number of parking spaces that they are proposing, that is a lot of vehicular movement that they're expecting to come in and out of that site. Now, many years ago, we had one in Batley, and I hear what the environmental services are saying. They have no objections in principle, but you normally find out it's after the development happens that all the noise happens. So we've had a lot like that, where we had to have enforcement go in and enforce on businesses. What I don't want is a business setting up and then finding themselves that they're at war with the general public and the residents around there.
Thank you, Councillor Scott. Councillor Pinnock.
Thank you, Chair. I think I can throw some light on the fact that as to why the site wasn't developed sooner. And that is partly due to the fact that it's in about 4 or 5 different ownerships, or it was. That rather discouraged a comprehensive development of the site. So, right, yes. Yeah, sorry, that'll...
Right, is there a... Yes, Councillor Clegg.
Thank you, Chair. I have to say I largely agreed with the Chair's comments previously. It does sound like a project that will potentially create a lot of jobs, and I know from my own experience in my own ward that light industrial is sometimes taking place in people's garages on housing estates, and that's not the way it should be. So I'm largely in favour or leaning towards that view, but I do appreciate a lot of the comments that have been raised, and it wouldn't potentially be nice to see housing, but in absence of that and the fact that it's potentially sat empty, I just wanted to raise my views on that. Thank you.
Councillor Scott.
Yeah, Chair, I just want you to refer to page 55 where it talks about the ownership, so it does actually say, so that is one of the problems. Perhaps that's something that they could go away and look at to see if they could develop for housing, to see if they could work together. Because with some of it being in the council ownership, we are keen to bring our sites forward. So perhaps we could try something on that site ourselves, our portion, or probably get the others, I don't know. But I just feel that as it stands, we've got a duty of care for the residents. Picture yourself living there and having that impacting on your life.
Councillor Steve Hall.
Chair, it's just one of the recommendations. It says habitat improvements, £30,000. I can't quite get my head around that, and I'll tell you why. I use Northgate every day. The state of Northgate, I rate a lot of roads on 1 to 10, 10 being abysmal. This is abysmal with a gold star. So I would rather see 30 grand spent on a road surface improvement scheme. Regarding the build itself, I don't think if it were going to be houses, it would have been built on by now. It's an ideal place. Good bus connections, traffic, virtually inside the town centre. Unfortunately, nobody's come along with that housing plan, so we've got to look at what we've got today, which I'm not, doesn't really bring a smile to my face, but not a right lot does these days. So I'll go with the flow, but I don't like £30,000 habitat improvements when it could be spent for something that's a hell of a lot better and makes sense. So that's my little rant for this afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hall. Any other speakers? Right, we've got Councillor Scott moving for refusal, Councillor Pinnock seconding. Councillor Clegg, are you? Okay, just 1 minute. Let's take this vote first. Sorry.
Thank you, Chair. So obviously we'll just need to have a discussion now in terms of the suggested reasons for or reason for refusal. So yes, I understand the concerns which have been raised in terms of sort of the amenity and the highways concerns there. I think I would stress that there are the positives with the scheme which have been picked up as part of that debate as well, in terms of, like I said, it's bringing in a vacant site back into use, and it will provide the sort of the jobs there. But going back to the reasons for refusal, I think I would advise members that the strongest sort of reason would be looking at the amenity side. I think that's where, if that's the route that you decide to go down, as opposed to looking at the highway safety side as sort of set out by the highways officers. So if you're looking at the amenity side of things, perhaps, like I said, you've picked up in terms of the sort of the vehicles, so the coming and going of those vehicles, the activities taking place on the site. You've raised concern that you don't think that the recommended conditions would mitigate those impacts. So I think then just coming back to the policy hook that you're looking at, are you thinking in terms of, like, say, your policy LP24, so that there's a section in there about sort of providing high standard of amenity for future and existing residents, so it's more, I suppose, linked in with your residential side, but it is that policy hook is there, and potentially along with, like, your chapter 12 in terms of achieving, like, well-designed places. So you're sort of suggesting this isn't the appropriate location. Although once again I would say this is an unallocated site, it's not a housing allocation, so in terms of the actual use that you're looking at, I think just have that in mind as well. But that's just a few suggestions, so if you want to, over to you, Chair, in terms of that discussion regarding the refusal. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Can we go to the vote, please?
Okay, so the vote is on refusal. If you could indicate for, against or abstain. Councillor Dodd?
For.
Councillor Gregg?
Against.
Councillor Hall?
Against.
Councillor Hussain?
Against.
Councillor Lowe?
Sorry, can you just clarify what
we're voting on refusal? Okay. Voting on refusal. So for refusal or against refusal. Do you want me to start again from the beginning?
No, because that's
So you voted for refusal, Councillor Dodd, yeah? Councillor Gregg, Councillor Hall, Councillor Hussain have voted against refusal. Yeah? Councillor Lowe?
I'm for refusal.
For refusal. Councillor Lunat?
For.
Councillor Monroe?
For refusal.
Councillor Bavais?
For.
Councillor Pinnock?
For.
Councillor Scott?
For.
Councillor Sheard?
For.
Councillor Stephen? Okay, so the application's refused.
Yeah, the application is refused. Thank you. Next application, number 9, 2021-9706. Nick Hurst, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'm Paul Dowd, a Development Management Team Leader for the Kirklees covered by a heavy Woollen Planning Subcommittee. I'm presenting on behalf of Nick Hurst, who's currently on annual leave. Just bear with me, I'll share my screen.
Are you still there, Nick?
Yes, I'm just can you see that now? can you confirm you can see that now?
Yes, we can see it.
Lovely. Right, the site is a bus and coach management maintenance depot located between Birkenshaw and Hunsworth. The application seeks the removal of condition 23 from the previous planning approval, which was 2013-93186. That approved demolition of a building and the formation of additional coach and bus parking and a storage area with screen planting and amended vehicular access arrangement. Condition 23 of the approval limited it as a personal permission to the applicants at that time, who were Arriva Bus and Coach Limited. This is to allow a new company, Two-Way Holdings Limited, to take occupation of the site. The application was brought to the previous committee, where members resolved to defer the application. This was to allow for more information to be provided regarding the new operator's operations and comparison with the previous occupier. This image is taken from the 2013 application and shows what the original approval approved. This plan, also from the 2013 application, shows the landscaping and regrading that has been undertaken to minimise the visual prominence of the bus and coach parking. This image is taken just east of the site from Whitehall Road West. The landscaping can be seen to just left of the photo, and effectively it screens it from view. This image shows the frontage with the coach and bus area behind the further trees. Following the previous deferral, discussions have continued between officers and the applicant. Further information and clarification in response to members' concerns are outlined within paragraphs 10.5 to 10.16 of the officer's report. To summarise these, Arriva Bus and Coach Limited has used the site as a primary coach bus management and maintenance hub for its UK operation. Two-Way Holdings differs in that it is a regional private coach hire business, as opposed to Arriva being an international public transport business. Two-Way Holdings is a smaller company than Arriva and will require time to grow into the site. They will, however, continue to use it for management and maintenance of buses and coaches. The day-to-day use of the site will be the same as before, initially at a reduced intensity until Two-Way Holdings Limited grows. Regarding traffic movement, the exact vehicle movements of Arriva cannot be provided, as they've already left the site, and Two-Way Holdings are not in situ. But using trick data, as is standard in situations such as this, because the business fall into the same use class, they are anticipated to generate the same or a similar level of traffic. In practice, however, Arriva had maximised the use of the site and had it operating at capacity. As a national hub for a business, traffic movements were considered very high, and that is way beyond the capability of Two-Way Holdings. Furthermore, due to the space limitation, Two-Way Holdings could not go beyond the site capacity reached by Arriva, and therefore they are unlikely to be able to exceed Arriva's level of traffic movement. On the green belt and Arriva's previous very special circumstances, these were considered to be the strategic location of the site, with there being no suitable alternative locations and the retention of local jobs. These are also considered to apply to Two-Way Holdings. The site remains adjacent to a vital transport network, and it has vital equipment and facilities to allow Two-Way Holdings to quickly and effectively continue to operate the site. Alternative sites would require a significant financial investment, and the construction of wholly new facilities including maintenance buildings and ancillary office space. While Arriva has left, their staff have been made redundant. Two-Way Holdings are in discussion with retaining approximately 40% of the Arriva staff, with plans to grow this number when they become established in the site. Questions over relations with neighbours were asked. The applicant has confirmed that they are happy to hold discussions with neighbouring residents if planning permission is granted. The matter of a culvert crossing the site was also raised. This has been discussed with the lead local flood authority, who were involved when the culvert was rerouted previously. They raised no objection to the proposal and are satisfied that the culvert was relocated in an acceptable manner. The ongoing management and maintenance of the culvert is secured through riparian ownership. In light of these factors and the information provided by the applicant, officers are satisfied that under Two-Way Holdings, the site will operate in either a materially similar or less intensive way than under Arriva. Beyond the similarities between the companies, officers previously recommended that the condition could be removed. This assessment and recommendation remains. Conditions must comply with various tests, including being reasonable and necessary, and government guidance outlines that planning permission should run with the land, and it is seldom desirable to provide otherwise. The PPG state a condition limiting the benefit of permission to a company is inappropriate because its shares can be transferred to other persons without affecting the legal personality of the company. Furthermore, the original permission was subject to another condition to protect the greenbelt. Condition 22 requires that the site be returned and restored to its original state if not used for a period greater than 6 months. Condition 22 is considered an effective way to protect the greenbelt in the event that Two-Way Holdings stopped using the site, making condition 23, the personal condition, superfluous. In light of this, officers now consider condition 22 to be neither reasonable or necessary. The removal of the condition is not considered to affect any other material planning considerations. The 2013 permission included various conditions on how the site should operate. These include time limits on operation and controls over noise generation. These are to be retained, as is detailed in the report. No consultees object to the proposal. 3 public representations were received and are addressed within the report. Officers therefore recommend the removal of the condition. Nothing further to add at this stage, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Members? Councillor Pinnock?
I want to speak to you.
Thank you, Chair. It was me who asked for this to come to committee because if I can go back to the original permission, this was quite contentious and it caused quite a lot of discussion at committee at the time because this application is about the field next to the Arriva garage, which I don't know for certain, but I'm fairly sure it's been there since the war. So it's a fairly long-standing business, and they wanted to use the field in between their premises and the adjacent houses. And this, as I say, was quite contentious. Councillor Scott will probably confirm that, because I think she was also there at the time. What happened when permission was granted was that I arranged a meeting involving the local residents and the applicants and Paul Farndale, the drainage officer, and the planning officer who was dealing with it at the time. We had a site meeting to work out the means of dealing with screening between the houses and this site, and also to deal with the culvert which goes underneath this field and actually probably under the garage as well. So the permission was personal to Arriva. I'm at the moment against removing that condition. Even if we grant permission, I think condition 23 should remain. There is a difference between condition 22 and 23. 22 merely says if the site is unused for 6 months, but that still gives the opportunity for somebody to come back. I think that the condition 23 should remain. I will leave up to other members who want to contribute to this debate to decide whether we should grant this or not. But I think condition 23 should stay, even if we give permission. I'll leave it at that for the moment, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Munro.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to come in on this because I'd like, first of all, it seems that condition 23 has worked perfectly well for Arriva. So it's not really, I don't really understand why two-way holdings require the change. And I'd like clarification on the condition 23, whereby the applicants are citing government guidance. The condition limiting the benefit of the permission to a company is inappropriate because its shares can be transferred to other persons without affecting the legal personality of the company. So is this saying, therefore, that the shares could be held by will be held by the directors and other members of the public? Could somebody explain the technicality of how that affects this condition? I'd like a clarification on that, please.
Through you, Chair, thank you. So in terms of the original condition 23, that stated about this permission shall be personal to the applicant only and shall not ensure to the benefit of the land. So in that case, with the applicant being Arriva, it tied it to Arriva as the applicant, as they set out in the condition there. Because we now have a new applicant, in terms of the two-way holding, it would either need to be reworded to specifically specify, well, to be honest, it would be able to be worded in the same way in terms of condition 23 about being personal to the applicant as being the two-way holding if members should wish to retain that condition 23. So that is an option what members can consider today if they think it's necessary. From an officer perspective, we didn't consider it was necessary with the condition 22, but obviously the debate and the discussion today, you can take that different view. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for that explanation. But I do feel very strongly that condition 22 and condition 23 are very different, and I would be in favour of the wording being changed to two-way holdings to tie them in with that directly, to make it personal to them. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Scott.
Yeah, as Councillor Pinnock says, I remember this application, former application, and it was a terrible thing. And Councillor Pinnock did put a lot of time and effort into this. And the condition 23 was I accept about the removal, but we can then reinstate it on this new application, put condition 23 on there again. So I think it has to be put back on in order for me to support this application. So in fact, if it remains, if we put a new condition 23 that we want, I move this application.
Okay.
I will second that then, Chair.
Okay. Any other members? Right, we've got mover Councillor Scott and a seconder Councillor Pinnock and originally Councillor Hall. Okay, thank you.
Okay, members. Councillor Dodd?
For with conditions.
With reinstating the condition, yeah. Councillor Gregg?
For.
Councillor Hall? Councillor Hussain? Councillor Lowe?
For with conditions.
Councillor Lunat?
Oh, sorry.
Councillor Munro? Councillor Bavais?
For.
Councillor Pinnock?
For.
Councillor Scott?
For.
Councillor Sheard?
For.
Councillor Stephen. 4. That's carried then, Chair.
That's approved. Thank you. Right, item 10, application number 2021-91354.
Thank you, Chair, and good afternoon, members. I am Christopher Carroll, and I am the case officer who works in the Majors team dealing with this application at item 10. This is a full planning application for the demolition of existing buildings, erection of 5 dwellings, formation of access and associated works at the old Whiteley Colliery site at the crossroads of Leeds Road and Muffet Lane, located between the settlements of Birstall, Batley and Hetmanwyke. The application is a resubmission of planning application that was refused by Heavy Woollen Sub-Planning Committee on the 4th of November 2020. The site measures approximately 1.78 hectares and consists of a cluster of former industrial buildings surrounded by hard-standing and overgrown areas. Although the site is a former colliery site, it was last used as a specialist metalworks with access taken from Leeds Road. All of the site is within the Greenbelt. The aerial image shows that the site has a rural setting with agricultural fields to the north and to the west, and a cluster of stone-built residential properties at Muffet Lane to the east. A single-storey residential property can also be found at the entrance to the site. The top left-hand image in this slide shows the existing access from Leeds Road, with the existing property 93 Leeds Road to the left. The top right-hand image shows the existing overgrown area within the eastern portion of the site. The bottom images show the former industrial buildings to be demolished, which predominantly consist of a number of brick and metal-cladded single-storey buildings. The images also show large hard-standing areas that surround the building. The top images in this slide show the current access arrangement from Muffet Lane and Leeds Road. The bottom right-hand image shows the views of the settlement edge to the south of the site, and the bottom left-hand image shows the rural vernacular found on Muffet Lane. This slide shows the bird's eye view of the site of the former industrial buildings within its context. Officers note that since the site was last presented to Planning Committee, there has been significant site clearance and a gate erected as demonstrated in the photographs on the right. The previous proposal sought the demolition of and site clearance of the former industrial buildings with amendments to the existing access road, so it just serves 93 Leeds Road. 15 dwelling houses were proposed to be erected in the western portion of the site, set around a new cul-de-sac road layout connected with Muffet Lane to the northeast. Public open space in the form of soft landscaping was proposed between the dwelling houses and Muffet Lane in the eastern portion of the site. This proposal was refused for the reasons set out in paragraph 4.1 of the committee report. This proposal today seeks the demolition of the existing industrial structures, illustrated as the orange buildings on the plan. The proposal also seeks an amendment to the existing access road so that it only provided pedestrian access to the proposal to and from Leeds Road. 93 Leeds Road will still have a vehicular access with Leeds Road. The proposal includes the erection of 3 4-bed dwelling houses and 2 3-bed dwelling houses, all at 2 stories in height, with single-storey elements that also include carports. These are illustrated as grey blocks on the plans. All of the dwelling houses exceed nationally described space standard. Each dwelling house would have a garden area and parking in the form of either private driveway, allocated courtyard parking space, or within carports. The dwelling houses are set around a cul-de-sac courtyard arrangement that connects with Muffet Lane via an upgraded private access road to the northeast. Open space in the form of soft landscaping is proposed around the dwelling houses and between the proposed dwelling houses and Muffet Lane in the eastern portion of the site. During the planning application process, the applicant amended the proposed site access and site access road to address highways development management concerns, particularly with regards to servicing and waste collection from Muffet Lane. This slide shows how waste would be stored and collected from a designated bin store at the entrance to Muffet Lane, and the access road would incorporate a passing place. The applicant has also submitted additional information to address the council's ecologist and drainage officer queries. This slide shows the proposed dwelling house types would be characterised by dual gable built forms, chimney stacks, parapet coping stones, and large barn-style glazed archway entrances. The proposed materials include a combination of stone, reconstituted stone, and grey roof tiles. In terms of an assessment, officers consider that the planning application has addressed the 6 reasons for refusal given to the previous planning application. Thus, it is considered that there are no issues with regards to highway safety, biodiversity, coal mining, archaeology, and mineral safeguarding. Officers also believe that an appropriate designed residential development could be achieved. However, the application site is designated as Greenbelt, and as described in the recently published NPPF paragraph 137, the fundamental aim of the Greenbelt policy is to still prevent urban sprawl by keeping land permanently open. Officers consider that this proposal would still represent encroachment due to the proposed access with Muffet Lane, as well as the proposed design, scale and spread of the development with the enclosure and subdivision of land into gardens. Officers consider that the proposal would have a greater impact on openness than the existing former industrial premises. Therefore, the proposal represents inappropriate development with no very special circumstances demonstrated. Therefore, officers consider that the proposal fails to accord with the relevant design and Greenbelt policies of the local plan and the National Planning Policy Framework, and for that reason, officers still recommend refusal. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. We have got a speaker by phone.
I'll just dial in the agent, Jay Everett.
Hello, welcome to the meeting. You've got 3 minutes. You can start now. Thank you.
Afternoon, Chair.
Are you still there?
Yep, sorry, still here, yes.
You can start now.
Oh, can start now. Okay, thank you very much. Sorry, my name's Jay Everett, planning consultant acting for the applicants. Good afternoon, Chair, members. We previously submitted an application for 15 dwellings on this site, which you considered in your meeting in June last year. That was refused for 7 different reasons. The applicants listened to what members had to say and drastically revised their approach to the site. As you have seen, the scale of development has reduced to just 5 dwellings, and a high-quality bespoke design has been achieved. You'll also see that officers agree that we have comprehensively addressed 6 of the previous stated reasons for refusal. It is, however, extremely disappointing to now have a negative recommendation from officers, one which I believe is totally unjustified, on the matter of the impact of the proposal on the Greenbelt. In that regard, the officer report misses out some fundamental facts and misrepresents the proposal. We have supplied a drawing which overlays the footprint of the proposed dwellings against the footprint of the existing and the extent of previously developed land. The drawing shows quite clearly that the footprint of the proposed dwellings does not extend outwards to any meaningful degree beyond the outer extent of the existing footprints. Mysteriously, you have not been given any analysis of the change of areas and volumes, usually the key test for determining impact on Greenbelt openness. The facts are that the proposed development has a significantly reduced extent of hard standing, the ground floor footprints of buildings reduced, and the most important measurement, the volume of the buildings, reduces by over 30%. So if the volume of existing buildings reduces and the extent of hard standings reduce and the extent of the development does not extend beyond the outer footprint of the existing buildings, how can the proposed development have a greater impact on openness than the existing? The simple answer is it cannot, and you are therefore being wrongly advised. The fundamental sticking point with officers is the proposal to access the dwellings from Moffat Lane, utilising an existing access point that has, however, historically served both the mine and the engineering business. We've taken great steps to design it in a sensitive way as a rural access with a central grass strip. How can that impact on openness? It can't. Lastly, I must take issue with the comments in the reports that the applicant has chosen to dismiss the design advice given by officers. This is simply not true or fair. It is in fact officers that have chosen not to engage further with the applicants on the detailed design of individual dwellings. In conclusion, the officer report in front of you does not fairly or objectively assess the impact of the proposal on the Greenbelt. The facts show that the impact on openness will be reduced compared to the existing. The truth of the matter is this proposal accords with Greenbelt policies, but more importantly, is a sensible reuse of a redundant brownfield site with a high quality redevelopment proposal. Thank you for listening, members.
Thank you for that. Members? Councillor Hall?
Thanks, Chair. I still go along with officers' recommendation and guidance. I know the site very well. I pass it every day. It's just at Endit Road from where I live. One thing that does draw attention is the fact that there's been no proper report back from the coal mining people. I know full well that this land does change, and it has changed many times over years, because you just don't know what's underneath. One thing also is that if this were passed, because you've got fields either side of it going from the A62 right over to a church lane that we were talking about not long ago, I think if this were allowed, it would open floodgates up for loads of other applications to come in. So I'm quite happy to back our officers and go for refusal again on this site.
Thank you. Councillor Law?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I can support Councillor Hall in refusal of this. Reading the report, I can't find anything positive that would persuade me to say, yeah, this is a good idea. I do know the area very, very well myself. And like it's already been pointed out, how safe is this land? Because it was a coal mining area many, many years ago. There is also problems with drainage. When it rains, the road is quite dangerous with water. And obviously I'm concerned about the impact that it would have on the green open space of this area. And also I've been informed that apparently across the road the llamas won't be very happy because it'll spoil their view. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Loonett?
Thank you, Chair. I was just going to agree on what Councillor Hall said, but Councillor Lowe got there before me, so I'm happy to go with the officer's refusal on this. Thank you.
Councillor Pinnock?
Thank you, Chair. On the face of it, this is an application to build houses on a brownfield site, so we ought to be rejoicing, shouldn't we? However, and it's very interesting actually that you, contrary to what you might think, the reasons given for refusing the previous application and the proposed reason for refusing this has nothing to do with highways, which you might think, given where the access is, relatively close to the junction with the crossroads at Whiteley, would be, and particularly since that was not the access to the site before. The access to the site before was on the main road. Clearly, and the reasons for refusal are to do with Greenbelt policy. It would appear that there is too much encroachment into land that wasn't previously developed, and such that we've got a plan here that doesn't actually use the brownfield part of the site, but encroaches into other bits. And of course, the building of the road itself is going across Greenbelt, where there wasn't a road. It might have been a track, but so not that I'm suggesting that the access should be taken off Huddersfield Road. That is probably not a good idea. But so clearly we have an issue where there is an impasse between us and the applicants. And like the two people who've already spoken, I think I come down on that side, even though we have a brownfield site that perhaps could be developed, possibly, but not like this.
Thank you. Any other speakers? We've got Councillor Steve sorry.
I was just going to move the officer's recommendation on this. I mean, the fact that it's also encroaching on Greenbelt, absolutely agree. So.
Thank you, Councillor Scott. So we've got Councillor Steve Hall to move refusal and Councillor Lowe to second. Can we go to the vote, please?
Okay, the vote on refusal. Councillor Dodd.
For refusal.
Councillor Gregg.
For.
Councillor Hall.
For.
Councillor Hussain.
For.
Councillor Lowe.
For refusal.
Councillor Lunat. Councillor Monroe.
For.
Councillor Bavase.
For.
Councillor Pinnock. Sorry.
For.
Councillor Scott.
For.
Councillor Sheard.
For.
Councillor Stephen.
For.
Okay, so the application is refused.
That is refused. So we're on to item 11, application number 2191-724. So there's two items together. So the other item is 2021-91725. So the officer is going to do the presentation for both applications. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Has my screen shown up?
Yes, we can see it. Thank you.
It's always a good start. Good afternoon, members. Jenny Booth for Development Management. The next site is the Smith Arms at High Burton, which has two current applications for planning permission and listed building consent. These applications are brought to committee at the request of Councillor Armour for the reasons outlined in the officer report. The proposals include the alteration of a window in the rear elevation to form a door and the provision of a raised decking with balustrading and 3 giant umbrellas to provide a formal outdoor seating area for patrons at the rear of the building. The considerations are outlined in both the officer reports with regards to enhancing an existing business, the impact on the listed building and conservation area, visual amenity, residential amenity and highway safety. The works would provide an outdoor space for patrons and as such is considered to support and enhance the existing business. In terms of the listed building and conservation area, as noted in the report, the rear area at the rear of the building is a later addition with limited views in the wider area. The conservation officer, sorry, I've just lost my slide. All right. Yeah, sorry about that. The conservation officer has reviewed the plans and supports the proposals. With the support of the conservation and design team, officers consider that the proposals are acceptable in terms of the impact on the historic environment. In terms of visual amenity, officers appreciate that the pub is an important feature of the area. However, the works are to be located at the rear with limited views in the public vantage points. Furthermore, as a public house, the provision of an outdoor seating feature is in and of itself not considered to be out of character. And so in terms of visual amenity, officers consider the proposals to be acceptable. In terms of residential amenity, it is noted that there are residential properties surrounding the site. However, the deck and canopies would not result in any overshadowing, overbearing impact or overlooking given the works are sufficiently distanced from any of these properties. It is appreciated that outdoor facilities for eating, drinking and socialising would likely result in increased noise. However, in consultation with the environmental health team, officers consider that this can be controlled via conditions in terms of the provision of a noise report and restricting the hours that the outdoor area can be used to no later than 10 p.m. in order to reduce the impact on neighbouring residents. Officers consider that with the conditions suggested, the proposals are acceptable in terms of residential amenity. With respect to highway safety, the car park is currently hosting a large marquee and a number of picnic benches, reducing the available parking to just 4 spaces. The provision of the decking would enable the majority of the car park to be reinstated as parking. It is noted from aerial imagery that the car park originally had 13 spaces and the agent has supplied a parking plan showing 11 spaces once the decking is in place. The Highways officers provided comments supporting the proposal subject to a condition requiring the parking is laid out and retained free from obstructions. Further details are within the officer report. However, to summarise, the proposals are considered by officers to be acceptable in terms of highway safety. There have been a number of representations, including 7 supporting the proposals and 13 objecting, as well as comments from Councillor Armour. These have been addressed within the officer report. In conclusion, officers are recommending both applications are approved subject to conditions as outlined in the officer report. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Jenny. We've got Speaker Councillor Armour.
Yes, I'm here, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, we can hear you loud and clear.
Right, you want me to start, sir?
Yes, you can start now. You've got 3 minutes. You can start now. Sorry, 5 minutes. You can start now.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was approached individually by 3 residents who asked me to bring this to committee. It's the case that some residents have been intimidated by threats from errant parkers and feel unable to speak openly. I'm not in any way anti-business, I'm not anti-pub, I most certainly am not anti-Smith's Arms, and I have an interest in seeing this and other local businesses thrive. However, I have a duty to represent the concerns of my residents. According to the website last night, there were 20 comments logged, as we've just been told. It's a ratio of 2 to 1 against, and there are references to antisocial behaviour and noise nuisance alongside parking. I will concentrate on parking issues and the adverse effects upon the listed building itself and the Highburton Conservation Area. Local planning policy rightly prioritises off-street parking provision. Yet this application, on the one hand, is intended to increase visitor numbers to the pub, but on the other, seeks to reduce the number of parking places from 13 to 11. Looking at the parking plan, I challenge the number of places claimed, for the way they are marked means that in practice, spaces 10 and 11 will be unusable. The effective number of parking spaces will be reduced to 9 at the most. Towngate, and especially Hall Lane opposite the Smith's Arms, have a long history of parking problems. Hall Lane is a very narrow residential road, and most of the houses do not have off-street parking. It only takes one badly parked car to block this road, and there is a history of bad parking, and this predates COVID-19. Recently, some patrons of the Smith's Arms have exhibited no regard whatsoever for local residents and have virtually abandoned the cars in Hall Lane. Towngate is narrow, but wider than Hall Lane. It is also a bus route and thus needs greater clearances between parked cars. This is a major access route to Burton Acres Lane and the surrounding large residential area. Again, many of the houses in Towngate have no off-street parking. Even 1 or 2 extra parked cars will be problematic. The access egress to the Smith's Arms car park is virtually opposite Hall Lane and joins the road at the linear junction of Towngate and Pardine. Pardine rises steeply to this point and has a right-hand bend as the road approaches the Smith's Arms. Parked cars here are particularly difficult for car and bus drivers to negotiate safely. The existing car parking situation in the area around the Smith's Arms is already dire. It does not seem sensible to bring forward an application which seeks both to increase car visits to the pub and simultaneously to reduce the capacity of the small car park. This application would have a significantly deleterious effect on the residential amenity and would compound existing highways and parking issues. As the applicant notes, the Smiths Arms is a Grade 2 listed building and sits within the Highburton Conservation Area. The original building dates back to the 17th century, and significant parts of the original are still to be seen. There is also a 19th century extension, which means that the most recent part of the building is at least 121 years old. I have looked closely at the proposals and feel very strongly that 21st century designs and materials such as acrylic and glass would be strikingly discordant with both the host listed building and the surrounding conservation area. Now, I appreciate that the conservation area is not preserved in aspic, but I strongly believe that alterations should be sympathetic to the surroundings and the history. I respectfully ask members to refuse this application on highways and residential amenity grounds, and also because the proposed additions will be out of keeping with the character of the building and conservation area. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members.
Thank you, Councillor Armour. Members? Councillor Scott?
Thank you, Chair. This did warrant a site visit. It was nice to go to a nice pub, but not being able, it wasn't nice not being able to go in it. However, it's a very quaint building, 17th century, part of it, 19th century the other. It really concerned me where they're looking to put the decking area. I wanted to check with officers, are they looking to remove some of them windows? Because you'll create darkness inside that pub, and the area where they're talking about putting the decking is actually the area where they probably where the drays used to pull up and push the barrels down. So it looks like that's where delivery is probably coming. I'm not in favour for this application. I think it's a very narrow street where the public house is, but the tent that they have at the back is sufficient to deal with what they want. Adding decking would create more noise and noise carries. And if you've got decking at home, you'll know you can hear every clip-clop that goes on it. So for me, it warranted a site visit to actually see. I'm not happy. I think they're going to take out the 19th century windows that will detract from this pub. And I think we've got to preserve a lot of these things these days.
Jenny? Are you there, Jenny?
Yes, Chair, sorry about that.
It's okay.
Which bit would you like me to come back on first?
Kathy? Whichever you want to take first.
Right. I mean, the later addition to the back, as I said in my report, the Conservation Officer has looked at the proposals in terms of what's going to happen to the listed building, and the only physical change to the building is replacing the two windows with a door, and he didn't have any particular concerns with that, given it is part of the later addition to the public house.
Thank you. Kathy?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Yeah, so it's confirming then two 19th century windows will be removed. If you look on your pictures, members, that side's the 17th century, I don't know if you can see it, and the other side is where I've circled, is where the 19th century windows. I think that would block a lot of light out of that building. I think it's a very quaint building. I think it should be preserved and retained for what we've got, and I understand what the Conservation Officer says. However, I'm moving for refusal of this application. Both applications.
Okay. Councillor Loonat first.
Thank you. I hear what Councillor Scott has said, but perhaps probably 6 months ago, I probably agree with what Councillor Scott had said. Right now, I'm in a place where we're struggling, and pubs themselves are struggling to remain open, and I can almost feel and understand why they've possibly wanted to have some decking space put there. I'm not a drinker, so hands up, I wouldn't know, but I would assume most people would actually probably be walking to those places or having their own vehicle, or, getting a taxi or whatnot. If it was that. I'm happy to kind of go with officers' position on this and delegate it out to the officers and work with officers to get to a place where we can look at allowing for the decking to happen.
Thank you, Councillor Sheard.
I'm a drinker. I do enjoy the pub. And the officers have suggested that there's no concerns themselves. And as Councillor Lunat said, at a time like this, we should be supporting local businesses and local pub. So I don't really see an issue, really, with helping the pub expand by placing a decking outside.
Councillor Law.
Thank you, Chair. I think I'm just echoing what Councillor Scott has said. It's a gorgeous little pub. It really, really is. And I just get concerned when some people, 17th century building, want to try, to me, modernise it. And to me, it doesn't work. So I will be supporting refusal on this. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Hall.
Yeah, as somebody who's chaired licensing for donkey's years, and yourself as well, and Cathy, I think you've done it as well. What we've done wrong, I don't know, but there we go. One thing that did stand out were speakers being used. Now, the amount of times that we had pubs at committee because they were using speakers outside, and obviously people get a bit rowdy, especially when weather's like this. They get a few shandies too many, and it does start getting a bit rowdy, a bit noisy. And what happens sometimes when you see it like a courtyard kind of a layout like this, it actually amplifies noise. You don't need speakers. It's just naturally noisy. So therefore, I know we're in bad times. Everybody knows that, but I don't like this application at all. So I would also go for refusal.
Councillor Pinnock.
Thank you, Chair. I have to admit that I'm in two minds. I hear what Councillor Scott has said about the perceived violence being done to a listed building, not just to the building itself, but to its surroundings. And one has to balance all of that with the conservation officers saying, I'm not absolutely sure they're saying they're in favour of it. They're saying they don't dislike it. It's a sort of negative way of looking at it in a way. But there's the issue of businesses being able to cope with the current situation and being able to stay in business. We therefore have to strike a balance between the two, and at the moment I'm just not sure whether what is being proposed is absolutely necessary for the continuance of the business, whether they need that in order to survive. From the photographs that we've got, it looks as though they have at least got some sort of outside seating area which can be used for the same purpose as would be the case in what they actually applied for, and without losing two of the parking spaces as well. So I think on balance I would probably come down against what they want, both from a planning application and a listed building consent point of view, but it is actually fairly finely balanced in my head. One of the things that has been mentioned is stuff about loudspeakers, and I would probably like to ask, have they got loudspeakers already, and do they make use of them, or is this something that's going to happen with the new development? I'll leave it at that for the moment, Chair.
Any other members? Councillor Scott.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I just want to put a clarity here and clarify something. I'm not against the licensing trade, the pub trade at all. I fully support it, but this small decking area where they're going to destroy a building, as far as I'm concerned, for a small decking area. When we were there on Sunday, the actual outside tables could sit, if you were socially distancing, about 24 people, and they've got that like a marquee as well that covered it. So for me, that was adequate. If you're going to have small decking and take them windows out, it would require you to go right round that pub to look at how tiny them windows are. They're unbelievably tiny. So I do think strongly that we have to preserve these kind of buildings. I don't think that decking will enhance or allow any more people to get into that pub. I think they're already using the outdoor facilities. You mentioned about speakers and things. Probably down in that marquee there probably is something that look like a games board.
Thank you. Any other speakers? We've got Councillor Scott moving refusal, and is it Councillor Lowe? Did he second? Right. Councillor Lunard?
Can I propose to accept it?
Right.
I'll second that.
Yeah, we'll take Councillor Scott's vote first, and then we'll go to Councillor Lunard.
Okay, so we're taking two separate votes as two separate.
Yeah.
Sorry. Right, but thank you, Chair. So in terms of sort of the debate and the discussion regarding the reason for refusal, there seems to be the concern relating to, I suppose, first of all, the impact on the listed building, the heritage impact there, with the loss of the two windows to replace with a door. So, like I say, our conservation and design colleagues haven't raised an objection to that, so I think that is important to bear in mind before you move to vote. So I think if you are looking at sort of the reason for refusal on those grounds, I think just do have that in mind. But whether you look at it in terms of, you know, like more the visual amenity and the impact on the character of the building from that side of things, so you know, like your LP24 and chapter 12, so just have that in mind in terms of your reasons for refusal. In terms of the sort of the noise and the impact on residential amenity as a result of the decking, the outdoor area. Once again, I just draw your attention to the suggested conditions. So there is a condition 4 about the provision of a noise report. So as part of that, that would pick up on things such as, you know, like the provision of speakers, like in an outdoor area. So I'll just once again have that in mind. But like I say, if you're looking at a reason for refusal on those grounds, about sort of, I suppose, the activities associated with sort of that outdoor area, and you don't feel that the suggested conditions about the decking only being used until 10 o'clock on an evening and the provision of the noise report will be sufficient to mitigate that. I think they were a couple of the key issues. Yeah, so I think in terms of the highways, at this moment in time, there is, like, as everyone's alluded to, there is a marquee on the site at the minute, which I think has reduced the number of parking spaces at the site. During the course of this application, the amended site plan has been received, so I think at the minute there's 13 parking spaces. I think that provision has been reduced, Ryan, hasn't it, to 4. But as part of the scheme, it would be the provision of 11 parking spaces on site, and it is an existing the existing facility, as you're aware. So I think in terms of the highway safety concern and the sort of the parking provision, I think the grounds for that would be quite weak. So I think that's something that you would just need to consider when moving to your vote. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Right, can we go to the vote, please?
Okay, so we'll take the vote on item 11, the raised decking application first. Proposal is to refuse. Councillor Dodd? For refusal. Councillor Gregg?
For.
Councillor Hall? Councillor Sain, Councillor Lowe,
For refusal.
Councillor Luna, Councillor Munro,
Abstain.
Councillor Pervez,
For.
Councillor Pinnock,
For.
Councillor Scott,
For.
Councillor Sheard,
Against.
Councillor Stephen.
Abstain.
Okay, so that application is refused. And then the listed building consent application, again voting on refusal. Councillor Dadd.
For.
Councillor Gregg.
For.
Councillor Hall. Councillor Sain.
For.
Councillor Lowe.
For refusal.
Councillor Luna. Councillor Munro. Councillor Pervez.
For.
Councillor Pinnock.
For.
Councillor Scott.
For.
Councillor Sheard.
Abstain.
And Councillor Stephen.
Abstain.
Okay, so the list of building consent is also refused.
Right, both of the application has been refused. So we move on to application 2021-91940, and the officer is Alison Downham.
Thank you, Chair. It's Paul Dowd again. Actually, the development management team leader for the area covered by the Heavy Woollen Planning Subcommittee. I'm presenting this application on behalf of Alice Downham, who's currently on annual leave. This application relates to 40 Beckett Crescent in Dewsbury Moor, Dewsbury, and is for the erection of single and two-storey extensions and the formation of a vehicular access. The application has been referred to committee by Councillor O'Donovan, who disagrees with the recommendation to refuse, as he considers this proposal would not affect visual amenity or have an overbearing impact. The application site is outlined in red on the location plan, and you can also see it in the aerial photograph. It's a two-storey semi-detached property constructed from brick and render. This is a block plan, and it shows that the extensions would be located to the front, side and rear. The formation of the vehicular access would involve creating a dropped curb to the front of the property, and this would allow access to the off-street parking area for 4 vehicles. Moving to the proposed elevations and floor plans, as shown on the submitted plans, the single-storey rear extension would project by 6 metres from the original rear wall. The projection of this element has been agreed through a previous larger home extension prior approval application. The single-storey front extension would project by 1.5 metres from the original front wall. The two-storey rear extension would project 3 metres from the original rear wall, and the two-storey side extension would project 3.2 metres from the original side wall. The single-storey elements would be designed with mono-pitched roof forms, and the two-storey elements would be designed with hipped roof forms, which would be flush with the roof line of the host dwelling. The walls are proposed to be constructed of brick with tiles for a roof covering. Move on to photographs. The impact on visual amenity is considered unacceptable for the following reasons. The cumulative effect of the proposed extensions would result in the formation of a dominant and incongruous feature within the street scene due to scale and design. The proposed extensions would not be subservient to the host dwelling, as they would more than triple the footprint of the dwelling. The proposed extensions and off-street parking area to the front would develop most of the amenity space of the property, with the area remaining to the rear measuring approximately 2.3 metres by 8 metres. The impact on visual amenity is considered unacceptable in terms of the formation of a dominant feature, which would be incongruous in the street scene and which would result in overdevelopment and an unacceptable level of amenity space for a proposed 7-bedroom property. The proposed extensions would result in an unacceptable overshadowing and overbearing impact on the adjacent number 42 Beckett Crescent due to the size and proximity to the shared boundary. The impacts on other neighbouring dwellings are considered not to be significant. Kirklees Council Highways Development Management Officers don't have any objections to the proposal, subject to conditions relating to bin storage and access and the surfacing of the proposed parking area. The report before members details the office's full assessment of the development. 2 letters of support have been received from neighbours, but in conclusion, the development is recommended for refusal by officers. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for that. Members? Councillor Law?
I'll start, shall I? Thank you, Chair. I'm not opposed to anybody wanting to add an extension to their existing properties as long as they are tastefully designed and of an acceptable scale. But for me, this is really, really big. And I also worry about the loss of garden space, taking away a lot of the garden. And I do think it will have an impact on the neighbouring property at number 42. But I'm also concerned about the impact it'll have on the whole street scene. And I think we could be setting a precedence and opening up for lots of other very large extensions. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I just want to say I paid a visit to that property, and regarding the garden, it's got a massive garden where you can see they've shown a drawing of 4 cars parked in the front garden, and it's got a big garden at the back. And you know, growing families are difficult at the moment. You know, moving houses, and you know, nearby there are extensions even bigger than that nearby onto Pilgrim Estate. So I don't know, I'll just leave it at the moment, but Councillor Scott?
Chair, I hear what you're saying now. We did a site visit obviously here, and it is an intensification of the site and it's against the street scene. For me, this one was, I understand growing family needs and they want to remain in your community. A lot of people want to stay in the community. Unfortunately, Beckett Crescent's quite tight. It's nice to see that somebody's actually got a drive going to take the cars off site. For me, this one, I was going to opt for a deferral and ask them to go back and work on it with officers to see if there's any way that they can actually, because as it stands as it is, I'd have to support officers' recommendation, but for me, I'd like to work with this family, you know, because they want to remain in the community where they're from and keep the family together.
Councillor Pinnock?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, the telling phrase in there, I forget which paragraph it's in, but it says that the footprint of the dwelling is tripled, and that just seems to me to be over the top, personally. But I hearing what Councillor Scott said, I would tend to agree, and if she was going to move deferral, I will support that.
Can I just ask the officers regarding the triple size of the extension from the house, which I've seen it myself on the side. Normally it's the frontage and the side. The side needs to be smaller than the original property, and I think that's what they've demonstrated. So if they're building something behind or the front, you know, how does this work? Can you just explain, please?
Well, the proposal is to extend to the front, to the side and to the rear of the property. So cumulatively, the extensions are too much for officers to support. The report sets it's all out. Individually, one or other of the extensions may well be acceptable, and certainly there is no suggestion that there's no inappropriateness in terms of principle. It's the scale of the proposal in front of us. To date, we haven't had any success in negotiating a reduction to the scale of the proposed plans, so we would have no alternative but to recommend a refusal. If members are minded to defer, to try to attempt to negotiate reductions, then of course officers will do that. But currently we've had no success in negotiating reductions.
Thank you for that. Councillor Nasheen.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Scott took the words straight out of my mouth. I was wanting to move for deferral because I understand the needs that growing families have in the area. I see it in my own ward a lot. From what the officers said in terms of negotiations, and it seems like what's in here, it hasn't worked before. Could I just put on paper today that if this does go to referral, can we urge the applicant to work with the officers and negotiate something that's workable if there is a need, especially if they're a growing family. So if it is moved to deferral, please work with the officers so it can come back and we can look at it. But if they don't work, then unfortunately, if they can't work together and it does come back, it looks like it will be a refusal. So if there is a real need, please work with the officers. Thank you.
Councillor Pervez.
Yes, thank you for that, Chair. Just wanted to say, obviously, this is my ward and there are many similar proposals in my area, but I tried to help this applicant in good 4 or 5 months ago, just sending an email to council officers and asking them if they could help the applicant and the agent, and then I don't know what happened there. So if they could work together, that would be good.
Councillor Hall.
Thanks, Chair. Just like to back Nosh up. I think what she said is absolutely right. On that up though, I'll be honest with you, some extensions I've seen, personally I don't see how wrong with this. I think it fits. But rather than go for a refusal, and I know there's quite a few members in here are not too sure, I think a deferral and for the applicants and council officers to get in a conversation and try and sort something out. You know, fingers crossed it'll work, but personally I don't see how wrong with what we've already got.
Any other members need to speak? Right, Councillor Scott moving, who's going to second? Councillor Penning, sorry, I'm a bit behind. Right, so can we go on to the vote, please?
To vote for, to vote for deferral. Councillor Judd?
For deferral.
Councillor Gregg?
For deferral.
Councillor Hall? Councillor Hussain?
For deferral.
Councillor Lowe?
For deferral.
Councillor Lunat? Councillor Monroe? Councillor Pervez?
For.
Councillor Pennick?
For.
Councillor Scott?
For.
Councillor Sheard?
For deferral.
Councillor Stephen?
For.
Okay, so that application is deferred. Thanks, Chair.
Yeah, that's deferred. So that brings us to the end of the meeting. Thank you very much for your contribution. Thank you.